Well, hey guys, welcome back to another 0 to 60.
Today, we're not reassembling the S62 still.
Yeah, it's been a week since we started that job and we made a mistake. Didn't do enough research. We went off of a reputable brand's rod bearing guide. And of course we had Shane here who's done rod bearings on heaps of BMWs, but he's never done an S62 and we forgot something.
I didn't really forget something. There was, basically, you might not even be able to see it in the disassembly video, but basically getting the two sumps off, the bottom one is very simple, that's just like a normal sump. And the upper sump, again, is kind of like a normal sump. However, we had, I did mention in the video that we had everything undone, everything was disconnected, and it was still very, very tight to get off. Initially, we just thought it was just because it's been on there for 20 years or whatever, and you just had to break the seal. So we ended up prying it from these two bits and then pulling it from the front and wiggling it down. Yeah, so it felt like there was another bolt, but some lever spots at the back that Shane spotted. Oh, okay, that's come down. It's not on that, is it? No. And when that came down, there was a pipe. The pipe's over there that comes up through here, and this very little one that comes up through there like that and goes into the block.
And because it goes into the block on an angle, and it's actually press fitted into the block, so it's a very, very tight fit.
It turns out that that was so tightly fitted into the block, and that O-ring and chamfer seals onto the upper sump, that is 100% what was holding the sump into the block, sorry, to the block. So as we pried it away, we actually bent that rod.
Now, I want to say this because the ECS guide does not mention that pipe at all. Like, that pipe doesn't exist on the ECS guide. And when we were reassembling it, this pipe, as it came out, it had a nice curve to it. And we thought it might be supposed to have a curve.
It was actually like it had two curves to it. So it looked perfect. It looked like it went up there and it come up sort of vertically and then went back into the angle of the block. So we thought that's how it's supposed to be. It didn't look creased, it was perfectly even.
And actually, even though ECS don't mention the pipe, they do mention that the sump has to come down at an angle. So it sort of all seemed like what we'd done is normal.
Yeah.
However, when we went to put it back in, this is very, very tight in the block and we didn't want to damage the block. So as soon as it started to grab, we sort of stopped. Let's do some research quickly. And the first home DIY we checked.
Well, a bit of an issue on our behalf there. We went to reassemble it and this was obviously very tight. So we thought, all right, we'll put the sump back up. So we bolted the sump, put the sealant on the corners where the joins are, bolted the sump back up and then went to slide that in. And because of the curve, it got jammed in either the block or the upper sump. So we then had to pull everything apart again, and it turns out that's when we discovered the DIY and that pipe is supposed to be perfectly straight. And now it does go straight through there. And
well, actually, let's clarify this. The first home DIY we looked at, he said, you're probably going to bend this pipe when you take the sump off, make sure you've got a spare one.
Yeah, make sure you have a brand new one to go back in.
Which we did know.
We didn't have. So yeah, basically just tried to straighten it in a vise, and it did get a lot more straighter, and that's why it now goes through there perfectly and into the block about that far. However, it's got to go into the block a lot further.
Now, we did consult some mechanic friends and they said, just use a hammer. But because of what these blocks are now worth, we figured we'd just do it properly. And that's what the delay is. We're waiting on one of these to come from America because Australia doesn't have any in stock.
Yeah, so yeah, Australia they had the part number in the system, but none in the country anywhere.
Do you want to show them where that actually goes in the block so they can see what it's like? And
yes, so you saw it go through the upper sump.
Actually, I'll grab a torch. And we're not actually, if anybody knows what it's actually feeding with oil.
So yeah, you saw it, if you can imagine the upper sump being bolted to the block there, sits about that thick, and this little piece went through the block on the angle, it goes through and lines up perfectly with that little hole there, with that hole, and then slides in.
That's as far as it wants to go.
And it starts getting tight, and if you push it a bit harder, because it is like a press fit, it starts getting really hard to get out. So I just don't want to push it in too hard.
It almost looks like it seals on the sump with this O-ring at the bottom, but then there's no actual O-ring in the block part. It's just metal on metal. So we definitely don't want to damage that orifice. We do know that this sump had been off before, hadn't it? Because it had aftermarket sealant around the back.
Yeah, well, it was weird. It only had the sealant going from the rear cover from the block. There was none on the front or the side. So,
and also this one is
That one had sealant pretty much the whole
everywhere,
way.
and there's a fair bit of damage on it. So it's safe to say it's been off before, and I just wonder if whoever took it off last time, they did the mechanics option and just hammered it back in, and maybe that's why it was already pre-bent and this was extra hard to get off when we tried to take it off.
And it does seem, well actually I was going to say maybe it seems too tight to get out, and it shouldn't be that hard to pull that pipe out of the sump, but the DIY guys, the guy on the M5 board said, if you are pulling the upper sump off, just get a new one because you can't remove it without damaging this pipe. So I can't stress that enough. If you are doing your rod bearings, or if you're removing the upper sump for any reason, just buy one of these prior, which turns out FCP actually had one in stock.
So they knew about it. I guess the other thing that we didn't do in the other video is give people a better look at the bearings, Dave. So these are the ones that come out of the car. Now, you were saying Ali never did the bearings.
Nope.
And he wasn't aware of anyone doing the bearings.
No, but he did get a oil analysis check, I think just before the supercharger went on or just after, and it came back as showing no considerable amount of bearing material in the oil, which was positive. However, that was still quite a few thousand kilometres ago, and it's had a supercharger since then, so I was expecting to see worse, especially after finding all the metal in the oil. But to be fair, as far as BMW rod bearings go, that's not too bad, is it?
No, like we've actually, well, the company's owned a V10 M5 for ages, so we've been paying close attention to high mileage S85 rod bearings. And we've been in forums for probably the last 2 or 3 years where everyone shares their bearing wear, and these don't look bad at all. But I mean, the S62s aren't as prone to rod bearings as the S65s or the S85s.
They're not as widely known, but I reckon that could be because, for other reasons, like I'd say there's more S85s out there with owners that maybe like to limiter bash them.
I wouldn't mind asking the audience, let us know what you think of this bearing wear if you've seen any other S62s. And keep it in mind, this car has done 307,000 Ks, 20,000 of which-ish had a supercharger on it. So
Yeah.
do we think they're the original, or have they been changed already?
They do have BMW on the bottom, so they are definitely OEM bearings. And a couple of people asked what bearings I've put in, which I decided to go with the Pavel Racing Engines brand because it's actually a really good sales pitch on their website. So they are the uprated coated bearings, and he gives all the technical specifications about why they're better and why they will last longer than the BMW ones. And I basically, after reading that, I was like, cool, take my money, like whatever it was, but it wasn't really any more expensive than buying just OEM bearings. And it reads like after you put these ones in, you won't have to do the bearings again, which to be fair, considering how much time I'll be driving it, I probably won't.
How much did they cost you with the ARP bolts?
With the ARP bolts as well, again, I went them instead of the stretch bolts. It was probably 600 or 700, something like that.
US.
Yeah.
Can you remember which ARP bolts they supplied?
I can't remember.
I think it's just ARP 2000s, but we will confirm. Doesn't say on the packet, does it?
No, it's the size of the bearings. Oh, it's got the torque for the bolts.
No, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
So they're the bearings that went in. The Pavel's Racing, they're definitely, well, according to the sales pitch, they should be a good upgrade.
And they looked nice as well, didn't
And
they?
considering these are the standard ones that have been in a supercharged engine, I've got a lot more confidence in the S62 bearing setups because that doesn't look too bad. Again, Ali did always say he's kept the oil clean, and this engine is very clean inside.
I've got to admit, obviously even a few viewers noticed that I was they could see I was pulling my hair out on the inside. But pulling the engine apart, and even we did put a boroscope up through the bottom of the block to look at the timing chains and other parts, and everything was quite clean compared to other people's engines I've seen when they pull stuff apart.
We do still have the worry, though, of where that metal's come from.
It is a concern because there's literally no debris in the engine at all.
No, a couple of people said it could be timing chain guides, which is possible. They look okay with the boroscope, but little flakes have come off and got in the filter, but there was definitely metal in that filter.
100%.
You've because of the delay with the pipe, you've ordered a few extra parts, haven't you? Which you're going to do now, which you weren't originally planning to use. You've got a timing chain, oil pump guides or something?
Oh yeah, the oil pump guide, because it was actually what made me think of it, when it came out, it's this one here. It's just a plastic, it is just a plastic tensioner.
Chain tensioner.
Yeah, which, I mean, this one looks fine, but it's just plastic, so obviously it's not going to last forever. But then again, on that gentleman's DIY where he mentioned replacing that oil pump, he said it's also worth replacing them. And again, FCP had one available to add to the cart, so I added it to the cart, so that'll be getting replaced as well, which just makes sense. The kit ended up being the order ended up being quite a lot more, but I had to buy new gaskets again because we use that one. I can't remember what else I put in there.
I know you've got a few other bits coming. We'll give you guys an update once that arrives. The worst part about all this was, the reason we were rushing to do the rod bearings last Friday, because we actually booked this in with a panel shop about a month ago, and he was waiting for another car, another major repair to get off his jig. And when we found the oil in the, when we found the metal in the oil filter, we thought, shit, let's rush and do the bearings before it goes to the panel shop Monday. So it was supposed to be at the panel shop 4 days ago. But now we're holding the panel shop up, so we feel real bad about that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
Yeah, sorry, Mark. It's just, luckily he's actually been quite understanding, and when I told him about finding the metal in, he was like, oh shit.
But yeah, as soon as that order from FCP comes up, we will bang it all back together.
Easy as that, just bang it back together, that's what you do.
Engine mount, that was the other thing you got.
Oh yeah, sorry, I probably didn't even show the audience.
We showed it, Shane was quite amazed quickly when he pulled it apart, but that was the other thing that was an unsuspecting issue when we pulled it apart.
Yeah, when we were dropping the subframe, the engine mount is just completely dropped.
And that will probably explain, because your supercharger, the intake pipe gets very close to the side, so I bet that's been broken for a while.
A little while, and yeah, like it was surprising driving it. You didn't really get much of a shudder or any vibration, but in the GoPro angle, when it was mounted really close to the supercharger, you could see a fair bit of tilt, so it's got to be that's causing it. So hopefully it even drives even a little bit nicer with the new engine mount as well. So yeah, that was another thing to change while we've got it apart. So yeah, that's an update on the S62. Hopefully that FCP order should be here mid next week. Fingers crossed.
We'll get it back together and it'll be straight over the panel shop. So this thing, and he said allow 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So hopefully, fingers crossed, if all the stars align, maybe within a month, this is going to be repaired on the road and you're going to be driving it.
I feel so much better, and with these rod bearings, so basically the engine will go back together, it'll go to the panel shop, and then it's obviously not going to get driven at the panel shop very much. So once I get it back, between 500, 800 kilometers or something, I'll end up just dropping the oil again and seeing if any metal has arrived or anything is in there that doesn't look right. Just check it all, and hopefully it's all good, and then fill it back up, and then we can start giving it a bit more of a hard time. And yeah, I've been talking to HDE Performance and he's ready to tune it, so yeah.
He's excited to tune it.
If everything goes good, this thing should be making some decent power pretty soon.
All right, that's enough, Dave. We're gonna go do some work.
Yeah, absolutely, but main takeaway, if you are gonna pull that upper sump off, just have that oil pump ready to go.
Thanks very much for watching, guys. We'll catch you in the next one.
Peace.